Okay, so welcome to our tutorial on performance task design. Last time we talked about assessment, we were talking about the concepts of alignment and rigor and how to design rigorous aligned assessment items. We focused on selected response and constructed response. Now we're going to take it a step deeper, if you will, or a step closer to authentic assessment and learning how to design aligned performance tasks that we can have students do as a way to gather evidence towards understanding. So let's start by looking at two example performance tasks and really trying to figure out what the teacher is trying to accomplish here and then assess whether or not we think they're good performance tasks. So take a look at this first high school English example and take a look at the prompt, right? Students will write an essay that defines the cultural role that rites of passage play by using 2 to 3 different cultures as examples. Consider the fact, what is this English teacher trying to assess here and whether or not you think this is a good assessment task or not. I would have to say that when you take a look at this prompt, it looks like what this English teacher is trying to assess is whether or not the student actually understands the cultural role of rites of passage. And not that that's a bad thing to assess, but given that this is an English teacher, that's probably not what her learning outcome, his or her learning outcome was. So you have a real issue of alignment here. So let's take a look at the same assessment, but refined slightly. So here's the same class, same assessment, but revised slightly. I want you to take a minute to read this prompt and respond to the post titled English Task and try to assess the same question we did the first time, right? What is this teacher trying to assess here? And how are these two approaches different? So you're going to compare this approach to the previous example and explain what you think the difference is. This is one of those quotes in this class that we keep coming back to time and time again, but I really think this Grant Wiggins quote kind of says it all on why we want to try to make good performance tasks. It really makes you realize that our goal is not to have students be able to regurgitate the different definitions and formulas that we teach them. Our goals, hopefully, are much loftier and go far beyond that. And performance tasks are a great way to help us accomplish those loftier goals. So here's our second example performance task, this time in mathematics. And take a minute to read through this prompt, which talks about a casino game and a student looking at the viability of a casino game from more than one perspective. Use the post math task to explain exactly what do you think from a content and skills standpoint a student would need to apply here, because that starts to give you an idea of what a math teacher would be trying to assess out of this task from a content and skills standpoint. And then also try to read between the lines and try to figure out what's the deeper understanding the teacher is shooting for about mathematics here. You know, when we did unit plan, hopefully you now understand the difference between what's in the knowledge and skills or the content and skills section of your unit plan versus the enduring understanding. So try to figure out what the enduring understandings are here between the lines. And last but not least, in that post, assess this task and whether or not you think it's a good assessment task and why or why not. And as always, consider factors such as alignment and rigor in your assessment. So this week's agenda is about trying to identify the deeper understandings that we're striving for in each unit. We just talked about the difference between knowledge and skills and understandings. And we really want to make sure that we realize that enduring understandings really are the learning outcomes that will be more sustainable. These are the things that the students will remember 5 and 10 years down the road. Most of the things in your knowledge and skills section will be gone after a year or two. And we want to try to work on some new assessment techniques to build assessment items that really do enable us as teachers to decide whether or not students have developed those enduring understandings. And by the end of this week, we'll draft our first performance assessment items for our units. So let's start out by taking a look at the performance task design process in the big picture. And this is the first time you're going to hear the acronym KUD. But KUD is one way that we help us frame out kind of like skeletons for good performance tasks. So let's kind of walk through that KUD process, or walk through that task design process, big picture first. So the first thing we do is we start by identifying the unit content and skills, or the knowledge that we want to assess for student understanding. So these are the building blocks that we've always talked about. First, we have to identify what building blocks are going to be assessed here. Then we have to figure out which of our enduring understandings do we hope that students will develop with those building block content and skills, and that's the U. Next, we try to develop tasks that the students can actually do that will force them to apply those building block content and skills, or the knowledge, to demonstrate those deeper understandings, or the U, and we refer to that as the D. And last but not least, once we have the KUD thread, we can design an assessment task of appropriate length and format. All right, so now that we've introduced the concept of a KUD thread, let's take a look at one of several examples. This is actually taken from a unit plan for a technology course. So let's go through the unit plan and extract the KUD. Let's start with the K, or the knowledge. So again, these are the building blocks kinds of things, the daily lesson objectives that come out of the content and skills section of a unit plan. And they're building blocks. If you remember our Mr. Holland's Opus example, these are the notes on the page, and we refer to this as the knowledge, or the K in the KUD thread. Then let's move to the left and look at our essential questions. Essential questions give us a window into an enduring understanding. Usually, if the unit plan is designed well, the enduring understandings are the answers to the essential questions. So that's a good place to find the understandings in a unit plan. And then moving to the right, when we look at the assessments, we see there in this example a performance task that the students would have to do, henceforth the do or the D, to show us that they can apply the content and skills in the exhibition of the enduring understandings. So now we'll give you a chance to show us if you understand the KUD concept by looking at the post titled KUD Identification. You will see examples of items that were pulled out of a unit plan, and you are going to identify them as either K, U, or D based on what you think they are. And just put the right KUD next to the number to match up the proper KUD identification. So let's take a minute to revisit enduring understandings and focus on those again. I know we talked about them a little bit when we started unit planning, but let's go back in depth. So as we said, frequently the enduring understandings are the answers to one or more of your essential questions. These tend to be large, broad, universal truths about your subject matter, or a generalization. The best way to think of them is they should always start with, in this unit I want my students to understand that blank, blank, blank. They are not learning objectives. They are not that specific. They're not things that you can build a lesson around. They're broader themes that kind of carry through a unit. And since they are broad and thought-provoking, they are not binary kinds of things. They're not yes or no kinds of statements. And they're broad enough in the sense that they can be exhibited in a continuum. A person can have a very superficial level of understanding and only be able to bring forth a small amount of content as evidence of this understanding. And as they move up the continuum and gain a deeper understanding, they should be able to bring even more evidence, more application, and exhibition of this understanding. So now we'll give you a short little quiz here. If you can use the post titled Understandings, you're going to try to convert 2 of these essential questions into enduring understandings. And that will give us a good picture on whether or not you understand, for lack of a better word, exactly what enduring understandings are. Now let's talk about the K, or the knowledge. So as we said, these are the building blocks. These are the notes on the page. These are the drills. We're talking about terms, rules, formulas, operational procedures. These would be things that we would consider knowledge. And we want to create situations in our performance tasks where students can apply these content and skills as evidence of some sort of deeper, higher level understanding. So how are we going to find out if students can apply the knowledge and exhibit a deep understanding? Well, we're going to give them a do. This is more than just a class activity, although sometimes a do can definitely be an activity in a class, but it's a task that's going to be used as an assessment. And sometimes these are summative kinds of things at the end of the unit. And when we talked about knowledge and content and skills, we referred to them as the drills. When we're talking about do's, this is not the drill, this is the game. This is an opportunity for students to apply in some kind of real-world situation. So these tasks usually require more critical thinking, higher, when we think about Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge. These are higher level thinking kinds of tasks. But they are discipline specific and require the application of very real content. All right, now we'll see if you understand the concept of do's by responding to the post do's, and you'll convert these non-examples of do's into true examples of do's or performance tasks. So here's 2 more examples of KUD threads, one in science and one in art. And I think when you start from the left or the K with these and move to the right, you can hopefully kind of see what we're talking about. You can see how the things in the K or content column are those building block kind of things, right? They're in this sense, they're definitions. And then you can see as you move to the right and you look at the understanding that this is really what your mission as a teacher is. Your mission is you hope that 5 or 10 years down the road, students have these kinds of understandings. And as you take one more step to the right and look at the D's or the do's, and you look at those tasks, you can see how those tasks both require higher level thinking skills and provide students with an opportunity to apply items from the content column. I particularly like the art example. Through an oral presentation, use the color wheel to justify color choice and placement in a famous work of art. That really is a good example of the game here, in the sense that it's critique. But I think that's a good example of a task that really requires higher level thinking skills. So now it's your turn to put it all together from your unit plan, and you're going to create just one KUD thread from your unit plan, and you're also going to comment on 2 of your classmates' threads as well. So you'll be doing this through the post titled KUD thread, which will have an attachment, a KUD template for you to complete. So once again, in summary here, you're going to start with your knowledge. All right, these are the building blocks. These are the things that would be in your content and skills section of your unit plan. And then you're going to jump to your enduring understandings and really find one that you think aligns to the knowledge that you've identified in your unit plan. And then think about a do, some kind of real life task one that both requires higher level Bloom's taxonomy thinking or Webb's depth of knowledge thinking, and requires the application of content from your knowledge. All right, and we'll see what you come up with. So one last request, I'd like you to prepare in your mind for next week. Nothing written is necessary, but I want you to think about what we just discussed and think about the KUD exercise and think about how KUD exercises could lead to the creation of more aligned and rigorous exam items.